Remember how in Build vs Discord the two combatants were so evenly matched that they had to look into the smallest details to decide who would top the other in a fight? That is what it felt like trying to rank Dead Battle Season 10, aka what many, myself included, are very happy to call the best one in the show's history, carrying on a streak of peakness that started in Season 8, and delivering the most consistent level of quality thus far, with the vast majority of episodes ranging anywhere between good to outstanding. This season will always mean something special to me, since it's the first one I decided to review as it was dropping, and it's what gathered me a good chunk of my subscribers, hence why I see this as my 1k subscriber special, hopefully releasing just in time for New Year's Eve, if all goes to plan. A lot of people in Dead Battle community welcomed me with open arms, which made this journey unlike any other, so thank you all from the bottom of my heart. We'll now set some ground rules / disclaimers before we go on. Number 1. These are all my opinions. My ranking won't necessarily resemble yours and vice versa, and that's okay. I look at these episodes as a whole, as if each was its own story. So if the breakdown explanation are pee-pee poo-poo but the animation itself is peak cinema, or if the breakdown particularly talks about a character always shooting freaking laser beams only for them to never appear in the fight, that's obviously going to factor negatively in the overall placement. And number 3, I don't feel like going over the same points for every single episode, so feel free to go down in my Dead Battle Season 10 review playlist to hear my full thoughts on each individual episode. And as I am very happy to declare the part of my reviews that many of y'all love the most, I love working on these myself, at the end of each review I have a themes segment, where I discuss the music and what idea, concept or ideal does each combatant represent in the battle they're in. Now I will talk about Galactus vs Unicorn in its own ranking placement, but for competition's sake, here's what I think are the themes carried by that episode. While they're both colossal planet eaters, Galactus ultimately is bound by circumstances and consumes planet because it's the only thing he can eat, while Unicorn is a circumstance, one of pure evil, enjoys spreading chaos and death. In fact, he is powered by the Transformers equivalent of death, can turn others into zombies, and looks like the underworld ringleader Satan. In contrast, Galactus is a survivor of the previous universe, values life, for as much as a cosmic entity forced to feed on it can, his power cosmic grants him control over all life itself, even the power to create it, and even possesses a form called Lifebringer Galactus. So I say the themes for Galactus vs Unicorn are, surprisingly yet not so much, life versus death. And here are all the themes of Season 10, episode by episode. I also took a note from Goku and decided to go a step further beyond, because I noticed two major themes in this season as a whole. The vast majority of Season 10 either taps into nostalgia, understandably given the long time requested matchups, or space stuff, making for a largely cosmic themed season, if not both. Neat detail. There's also a lot of morality-themed matchups beyond hero vs hero or villain vs villain, which does play a part in the amazing combatant chemistry present in most episodes. So let's just get into them now, shall we? Boomstick making funny bird noises was the highlight of this episode. Yeah, I'm sorry, Phoenix vs Raven is perfectly fine, decent even, but there's gotta be a worst episode of such a peak season, it gotta be this one. The music in some parts are nice and the Jin Dead joke is hysterical, but the acting is absurdly minimal, the humor is flat, and the way they list off cosmic feat after cosmic feat after cosmic feat just makes me run off oh dams extremely quick. It's not character driven in the slightest, it's a grocery list. The only thing I got out of it is that these two chicks can basically do everything but Raven has cooler designs. And the sprite work isn't bad per se, but compared to how good they get later on this season, yeah. The end-drawn builds deserve every praise they've been getting, absolutely no disagreement on that. And I don't want to say otherwise the fight is style over substance, because I always found it a fucking stupid saying when applied to anything that's not random explosions. This fight is not random explosions, there is substance, it's just that it feels like standard substance, it's not the kind I like. There's some weird scaling, weird pauses, weird dialogue choices. The final blow was generally cool though. And while the track is very catchy, it's also rather nostalgia dependent. So it's not really shining on its own like say the first half on Not Your Actual Size or the entirety of Mind Over Matter. So if you want a memorable cosmic powerhouses themed Marvel vs DC fight, you can fly over this one. Stitch vs Rocket Raccoon is probably my first out of 2, if not 3, of my most controversial placements in this ranking. As an episode about 2 small characters, it just feels small, period. Not just because of the episode's small runtime. Sure, there's more subtle humor to appreciate, but the editing is wonky, the raccoon jokes overstay their welcome, and they spend a bit too much time on the whole X beat Z so he can do Y bit for the Thanos gun bit, in my opinion. There's a lengthy joke segment that actually manages to criticize the whole ex-wife joke trope far better than anything in Cole vs Alex, and Wiz trying to apologize and bring back Boomstick by talking about planetary explosions and actually working was pretty damn funny. For unknown reasons, I criticized the shit out of the Space Hawaii setting at first, but in retrospect it's a very unique and creative setting that allows these two fuzzballs to channel both their Aloha surfing and satellite weapons. Despite starting off slow, I like the differences in their laser blast, Rocket being more straight and precise while Stitch are more gooey. Ew. I definitely love the contrast between Stitch being a powerhouse that Rocket has to evade with traps and gadgets, only for Stitch himself to display a 100 IQ play with a makeshift rocket crafted on the fly. Everything about how scandalized Rocket gets a Stitch body mount to the point of being the reason why he bursts out of his stronger weapon is hysterical. Ditto goes for the sheer irony of him dying by his own rocket and weapon stash. I remember feeling pretty disappointed they didn't share a moment about both of them being tragic experiments, instead of going for a more silly goose chase, but right now I don't feel strongly about that anymore. So surf's up if you want to chuckle for a while. Ant-Man vs. the Atom stands out from other Marvel vs. DC fights with its own unique, sciencey fun facts vibe, and shaking up the course formula by having Boomstick try to out-science Wiz, much to the latter hilarious bewilderment, as they go over Hank's backstory and handling of his mental health with surprising amounts of dignity. Oh, and Atom is there too. Yes, sorry, but maybe it's the character not being too exciting in general, or me preferring there to be more of an edge to it. But his breakdown presents the character as very plain and vanilla to me. The size jokes border on overstaying their welcome, and the setup for the fight as they literally go grrr and punch each other, I'm sorry. With how fantastic the character writing in Modern Death Battle has gotten, this is embarrassing. It feels like a parody skit of what Death Battle is at its worst, but what follows is a very fun and creative fight that plays around with scale, fittingly enough. There's also some bits of humor and science talk here and there as they try to out-nerd each other, and you know how much I love when they go the extra mile to visually differentiate their similar powers. The voice acting for Atom sounds a bit slurred, is that a word? I don't know if maybe it's an accent I'm familiar with, but it kinda sounds half asleep. Speaking of Atom, goodness what a way to go. On one hand, it's an extremely brutal death compared to the clean disintegrations pretty much all other combatants get this season, but in retrospect, I actually love how unique it is to Ant-Man character. Anyone can decapitate or disintegrate, to be honest, but filling up someone with heads till they explode out of their body xenomorph style? Yeah, that's on Ant-Man's lane and I think it deserves praise. Just the image of the ants circling sideways Atom thingy, I don't know, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies for some reason. The track is pretty groovy and triumphant, even if nostalgia depended on the second half. The conclusion is fine if pretty straightforward. Overall, a pretty damn good premiere for this season. Killua vs Misaka is an interestingly obscure matchup that entirely honestly feels like more in line with Season 9, aka the Let's Introduce New Franchises season, which I mean, I don't mind at all, but it did kinda suck to see people whine about that battle using the same series over and over and then barely showing up when they do something new. It just sucks. What thankfully doesn't suck, however, is the episode itself. Both breakdowns waste no time getting into their powers, but thankfully it's not all versus mambo jumbo, as we get into their characters' backstories and personalities, even if, as someone truly unfamiliar with both, I felt more emotionally touched by Misaka's. The jokes outside of Wiz having a science-gasm are pretty whatever, but some subtle sound effects here and there and quick quips do make me chuckle. The city in the background looks absolutely stunning. The sprite work is definitely noteworthy, and the energy effects plus hand-drawn stuff all looks pretty great. I appreciate the choice to make Misaka's light in yellow to better contrast with Killua's blue, despite both being blue in canon, but honestly yellow just fits her better. I don't know, maybe that battle kinda gaslighted me on that. I've seen mixed reception on how character accurate the setup is for both characters. Honestly, anything is better than Girl Punch for me. Speaking of interaction, this one scene of them going over the city with their respective transportation methods always came across as really cute to me for some reason. You almost forget that you're watching two minors fighting to the death. Speaking of, the fake out really got me at first, and I love how it was all Misaka's planning and calculating giving her the win, showing her grander experience on the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, sometimes that battle falls back into the, let's call it, early 2000 online edge that defined the series early on, and Misaka's laughing as the blood of her enemy rains all over her is a pretty good representation on that. Change X of X Art offers some amazing track art and high energy bop that feels oddly nostalgic for some reason. I don't know, honestly, this whole episode feels nostalgic weirdly enough, even if I didn't watch either of these not exactly recent anime. Maybe it's the footage they use, I don't know. Maybe I'm being gaslighted again. Overall, a shocking new entry in season 10, but far from revolting. As I went over my review video, I just have too many mixed feelings about Goku vs Superman 3 to say I love it as much as many say they do. As nice as it was to learn more about Goku, his real life inspiration and similarities / differences with Clark, it's all still the same characters, same matchup, same things that I already went over, same winner, and the same problems with this fight even if it's in a different flavor this time. It's honestly quote saved by the newish stuff they cover, outstanding animation, banger soundtrack. I'm just still not sure if that was enough to justify this episode's existence. It just cannot hold a candle to the innovation, experimentation and creativity that define this season. But again, like I said in my review, this episode still works as a celebration of what that battle is as a whole. It ultimately exists more for people still interested in this matchup than it does for me, and I'm perfectly happy with people enjoying something I don't care for. That's great, good for them. But as far as my ranking goes, I'd rather peer into another multiverse window to see another take on this fight. I just don't feel like talking about this episode anymore. Martian Manhunter vs Silver Surfer came out at a very tough spot. It was like the third Marvel vs DC episode and the fourth Marvel using one in the season, so many felt pretty tired, and probably didn't do much favors when it came to how unique it was as an episode. This battle honestly decided to completely deviate from the usual formula in a way that many, from what I've seen, either love it or hate it. It's kinda like the Batman v Superman of that battle. And depending on your thoughts on the film, you probably think I either call this episode atrocious or a masterpiece. Anyway, the editing is pretty good, some solid humor here and there, and it did risk going straight into the Cosmic Feet at the Cosmic Feet tiredness I didn't like in Raven vs Phoenix. But instead, the breakdowns opted to be the most character-driven centric the show quite possibly ever had. You don't have to keep an ear out for the specific power or gadget in this analysis, no. You have to focus on the very soul of these characters, their tragedy, their loneliness, their introspection. I love how the breakdowns manage to foreshadow Galactus being actually surprisingly chill for a World Eater, but Boom Surf is unbearable to listen to, and I would much rather have my planet be devoured than listen to it again. Back on the fight, I love the noir filter that fits both John's profession as a detective and the old school sci-fi for both. And the thing about the fight is that it's a deconstruction of what the battle usually is. Silver's cosmic awareness loses him that he has to fight John until one of them survives, so he tries to flee from the fight, until the death battle formula forces him to engage in combat. Once again, I love the different effects for their own telepathies and intangibilities, and somehow the flawlessly animated dragon slashing a planet conveys more scale than the entire space sequence in Phoenix vs Raven. John overcomes his fear of fire, affirming his pride in his Martian heritage, and gaining awe and respect is touching, but not quite as the music fully swelling in, as Lauren makes John feel more pain than any star ever could. The two both realize they're in a dead battle and that this truly cannot end without a good man dying, in this case being John, Whoops and Noid will be able to live with the uncertainty of why this had to happen, as the latter has a fantastically delivered monologue about just that. Wow man, just what an haunting way to look at that battle. Mind Over Matter, unlike the other two Marvel's DC tracks, shines completely on its own light without giving to the temptation for any nostalgic theme linked to either character. Going instead for a sci-fi inspired, swelling, serene yet suspenseful track that packs an emotion punch in the latter half. It's a bold and risky take to make the episode about the emotion rather than the action, and sure, there are fights who successfully manage to juggle both without problem, but this fight kickstarted a series of experimental approaches to the Death Battle formula that you will see me having various thoughts on as this ranking continues. And thus, I believe this episode leaves far less slack and far more praise. God knows these two need it. In yet another one of my most wanted episodes featuring a character I love and I'm more familiar with against one I only know from memes, unfortunately this one kinda left me disappointed. Rick's breakdown is pretty good, I love the synth background music, but I feel like they kinda land into idolizing someone who shouldn't be idolized territory at times. Reminded that I'm not exactly head over heels for character who exists primarily to be vulgar, like say Lobo or Deadpool, so that probably played a part. The breakdown for the Doctor is still pretty damn great though. Lots of 11 clips, so that's a plus in my book. The cutaway gags basically do the same let's kill dummy joke twice, but I mean, I'm happy they're at least using him for his actual character purpose, and both gags have the purpose of explaining how Doc and Rick's most noteworthy guns work. The animation itself is pretty great, the track is fantastic, and the voice acting is consistently great on the Doctor's part. But yeah, while I still wish for that things had gone more quote cosmic, like say 14 summoning all of the Doctors or him and Rick hopping 2 dimensions including the Widmageddon Equestria, there's still some great character driven moments, king of which being the fact that, again, talking about how experimental this season has been, they managed to make Doctor be the first Terran combatant to win without hitting his opponent once, just evading, dodging, or using the enemy's own stuff against him. Just a masterwork character portrayal there. And it opens the door for more non-violent characters to be used in the future. Overall, I like this episode. I just don't see it as the absolute best it could have been like most matchups in this season. It kinda sucks I got sandwiched between Scooby Courage and Goku Man, both in terms of conversation surrounding it, and quite possibly budget usage to be honest, but that's my tinfoil theory. Still though, if you want to go to an adventure in space-time, buckle up. Whoever decided to start this season with the smallest characters they've ever done and ended with the largest characters they've ever done, I hope they get paid handsomely because that was a genius move. Regarding the episode itself though, it's pretty damn good. The editing is really nice to look at, the cutaway gags are kinda whatever, but I love how much they focus on Galactus being more human and on the tragic side of things, even if the ultimate nullifier kinda removes the fun out of this whole debate, which I guess kinda makes sense given its purpose, but I'm glad they at least acknowledge it. It was really interesting to learn about both of their backstories, and they did an especially amazing job at selling Unicron as a veritable eldritch abomination, especially with how sympathetic they frame Galactus as. The sheer intimidation factor deadass made me fear for Galactus for a second. Speaking of, they did a brilliant yet sneaky thing, for those with a good attention span at least, by saying you can't destroy destruction in regards to Unicron, after saying that Galactus did just that. I swear, raw as fuck lines like you can't reason with a hurricane that hates you or is as inevitable as your dying breath have no business being in a breakdown, but they are, and I'm so thoroughly glad that's the case. Describing the fight animation as a cinematic visual spectacle, with custom-made models to boot, would be underselling it. Again, while the fight unfortunately doesn't have the same level of personality clashing as say Frieza vs Megatron, there are subtle character-driven details I appreciate, such as Unicron's stinger thingies hurting Earth like a burning parasite, while Galactus grabbing it and leaves it unaffected, showcasing their respective stances on life, or Unicron being such a petty bitch to go like, oh I can't do that, then neither you will, as it crashes the planet, followed by Galactus being disgusted by how his opponent treats life so carelessly. The vocal performances really sell Galactus' godly presence, Unicorn's pure evil respectively, and the grand dialogue they have feels straight out of a Jack Kirby comic book, even if not always easy to hear between all the music and effects. Speaking of effects, while this spamming does risk to get samey after a while, I love Galactus shaped beams. Bo wanted no copyright. It's basically the equivalent of hitting someone with your own merch or something. Them going full Gurren Lagann as they start dwarfing galaxies with a mere presence was just a marvel to see, in every detail. A unicorn possessing the ultimate nullifier, which is still a technological device after all, was clever and didn't see it coming. Much like our unicorn didn't expect Galactus changing servers then logging back just in time to siphon his energy. Quite satisfying to have the planet-consuming entity who does it just for evil be consumed in return by someone who does it out of a circumstance and to maintain universal balance. It's almost as if Galactus said, how dare you exist without an actual productive purpose for the universe. I've seen many people describe this episode as Thanos vs Darkseid but better, and honestly, yeah, in a lot of ways that sounds about right. All-consuming is a chill-inducing, orchestral and atmospheric as hell track, really selling the Lovecraftian royalties to bring. So in conclusion, while this episode might not leave a universal bite mark as far as season time quality goes, these two still decide to eat and leave no crumbs. Dark Souls vs Skyrim is a supremely better representative of what this season was going to be compared to its actual premiere, on top of heralding the return of peak 3D animated fights. Still obvious Sauron was the Lich King. As I said in my review, it was fascinating to learn more about the dark and grim lore, or what I essentially thought to be just an atmospheric rage game. It was certainly helped by the fairy tale book-like editing and the occasional lapses into humor, as they emphasize all the right things like the war and the silencing bell. The background music is top notch, even got me emotional for a bit. I love how the die repeat cycle is rendered relevant to both the gameplay, lore, story, and the fight itself, and I love just as much how the Skyrim side of things immediately differentiates itself with its humor and modeled silliness, without losing that universe-shaking epicness. The jokes where the music cuts before they continue to the next point fit my humor to a T, and we have one of the best cutaways slash expository gags in the show's history, as Boomstick is horrified by the realization that Wits doesn't have a soul to absorb. The whole setup being essentially two prophecies colliding with one another is nothing short of epic, and as much as that word has unfortunately been fortnighted to death, it's the best way to describe this fight as a whole. Epic. Fireborn still makes my soul elevate to the higher plane of existence every time I listen to it. While the fight and honestly episode as a whole has its fair share of oddly slow pacing, the way they exchange blows with simple swords, then bigger weapons, energy attacks, summons, final swords, not to mention the power in stuff like grabbing lightning and stopping time, really sells the idea of an unstoppable force versus a immovable object. The downside is them being portrayed more like forces than characters with a personality, as expected being from RPGs after all, but there's still this character-defying and frankly raw as fuck moment of Undead pulling himself to the sword to choke the ever shit of Dragonborn. This episode however also heralds was honestly my only problem with season 10 overall, that being the ambiguity in some final scenes. It's kinda unclear who really won until they get to the conclusion, and even then more elaboration about the cosmology of Skyrim would have been nice. Still, regardless, great episode. Frieza vs Megatron is, again, an episode where I don't want to repeat myself too much on, in regards to what I already covered in my review, but the breakdowns capture the characters to a T, with some surprisingly effective editing, even if brought down by more toy jokes that I could actually laugh at, and the fight itself is still peak cinema, but some things bring the overall episode a bit down. For whatever reason, there's a lot to scrap the material from the concept art, which included the usage of the panic bubble that actually matches the focus given in the breakdown, and more overall focus on the size difference between the two that the end result honestly went in great lengths to avoid. Still, this fight is without a doubt the preview I watched the most. Between the old school villain music and vibe, the animation, performances, the personalities clashing one another, just damn man. I've seen some say that the fight is a bit slow paced at times, but honestly, I still don't think it would have nearly the same level of impact without the slow moments emphasizing the skill and power, like in Transformers stuff, between the fast paced action that recalls Dragon Ball Z fights. It cannot be understated how beautifully they managed to juggle between this being an epic cosmic fight and their personalities clashing as they try to out-monologue and out-racist each other. Something about the interaction just feels like an official crossover, like having Frieza talking in great length about the Cybertronians he intends to kill, whether it's the one in front of him or not, and Mega getting to Frieza's skin despite not knowing his capacity to survive in deep space. And between Frieza's false politeness, slimy dickishness, lack of care for his troops, and genocide tantrums, versus Megatron's utter lack of fear towards his opponent, passion in protecting Cybertron, gladiatorically in combat and astute mind games. I'm sorry, this battle just exudes so much personality that Galactus vs Unicron just cannot compare. I will say though, Megatron saying fool 3 times kinda negates the impact of him making a callback to Goku's famous reply to Frieza at the end. The track still makes me want to conquer planets while bobbing my head like an heavy metal fan. And in conclusion, honestly has my favorite X vs Stats argument in this entire season. Like, yeah, Megatron has a win coin and the intelligence to win, but Frieza's speed and endurance was beyond anything he could reasonably expect. Still though, he died alongside the same planet he swore to protect. Truly a battle. Oh, Cole vs Alex. I guess it's only fitting that the overall episodes got pulled by 2 conflicting separate directions. On one end, a breakdown that does a serviceable job at conveying their powers and backstories, brought down by unfunny jokes supposedly meant to make fun of how that battle once was, despite ending up sounding like a parody of a parody more than anything. And on the other end, one of the best animated fights in the show's history. Okay, despite the breakdown section bringing down this overall episode's quality like the plague, there are nuggets of quiet here and there, like having dubstep play in the background while going over Cole's electric powers, the beautiful note his eyes is ended on with a sneaky Second Son reference, how they use Spider-Man as a storytelling device for both characters since they represent opposite ends of the power and responsibility spectrum, and the last speech about how human views Alex is or not just goes unexpectedly hard instead of coming across as triad edgelord stuff like they maybe intended, I guess, who knows. What I do know is that the Let's End This Debate Once and For All is the nostalgia callback that does actually work. The fight itself, good god, the fight itself, man. It feels like the third act of the best superhero movie of the 2000s. Which one? All of them. Between the background rap, the Golden Dawn filter, the foul-mouthed anti-hero rejecting the villains we can rule together speech, the edginess, gnarly action, it's all there and I love every single bit of it. It's a love letter to that era of movies, you could say. The one thing I was hoping for in this battle was them incorporating the urban environment in some way, since free roam parkour is basically synonymous with both these games. And I guess they feel like cooking that day, because they go peak on that too. Between eating helicopters, climbing on buildings, hopping on trucks, recharging on power towers or crashing into offices, not to mention the speed, the choreography, the agility, the power, the energy effect, the sound design. Alex feels spooky and Cole feels powerful. The hype moment in this fight for me was when Cole defiantly rejects Alex's offer as the orchestra swells in full force. Lightning storm crumbling down on the tower as Cole recharges and knocks Alex backwards, activating his lightning sabers, making Alex look like a humanized Shin Godzilla from Desperation. I swear, I replayed this part countless times and I get chills every single one. The thunder sound as Alex turns into Devil Trigger mode, Cole pulling a Uno reverse card as he gives Alex some karma and absorbs him, like he absorbs countless others. The war as fuck ending line that perfectly captures his jaded but finally heroic core to a T. I swear man, if the breakdown section wasn't so doo-doo water, and we're talking about animation alone, this would be we would be in the top 3 right now. This fight animation, Proton my type, till infamous. Wait, what the fuck did I who wrote this shit? Pretty much everything about Guts vs Dimitri is something I enjoyed as an outsider of sorts. I've heard about these characters, I've heard about it being a great matchup when it was just that, and I've heard about it being a great episode when it first came out, and I'm very happy to report that they were all absolutely correct on that. I always loved the approach of exploring the character's skills, arsenal and feats in conjunction with their narrative journey, especially when it's psychologically torturous ones like the ones these two had. You will come to discover soon enough how much I love tragic characters. I love the full theme music and vibe and Guts' breakdown, not glorifying his better status but instead going over his inner pain, which is coincidentally enough perfectly symbolized by the berserk armor looking cool and badass but actually proving to be fatal with prolonged use, which is a vital detail to understand in going into the fight. I like how they explain Dimitri's inner demons being more like a sadistic side under a pretty boy layer, in contrast with Guts kinda carrying his trauma on his sleeve with his stoic hunk persona. As a common point though, I love how both the analysis follow the everything is alright, trauma, everything is getting better formula, kinda like the light at the end of the tunnel sort of way. They talk about what I can only assume to be the Fire Emblem equivalent of Harry Potter houses, and sure, I have no idea what they're talking about, but it's charming to see them having fun. If there is one word to describe the fight itself, it's war, man. R to the A to the W. The strength, the choreography, the speed, the violence, starting from the theme. How the hell can a musical track make me want to solo entire armies in the name of vengeance and make me want to feel sympathy for my opponent's pain, all at once? Like, is that even possible? Apparently, the snowy setting is not only perfect for the darkly dressed Dark Avengers, but for the amount of blood they're about to spill. Guts' stoic and no-nonsense personality matches with Dimitri's insane yapping perfectly, much like the former post-apocalyptic weapons, contrasting with the latter not the best back home, but to you and basically Gandalf level of magic. And of course, the hype scene in the fight is a flawless combination of the respective revenge mantras in a way that honestly feels like it was always meant to be, letting their mental and literal demons overtake their minds, leading us to the ending, in which Gus lost too much blood for his armor to keep him alive, making him die standing while trying one last hit, much like Dimitri was ready for one last defense attempt. Seeing a kindred cursed spirit in Guts as his mark calls for some demons to drag his soul to hell, Dimitri swears to defend his corpse, happily jumping into the fight. Now, on one hand, it's beautiful, compelling, emotional ending, big respect to Guts with a shot that could honestly belong in a painting. On the other hand, again, it's not explicitly made clear to viewers who didn't listen to every detail of what just happened, but yet, that's on them, but you know, that battle kinda injures some mass appeal in order to work. I would personally change Dimitri's line to be like, he died standing, or something like that. Regardless, despite God's End pushing both these two into despair, the Dead Battle team delivered a big warness with utmost care. If my thoughts towards one of my most wanted episodes happening unexpectedly with my preferred outcome and a big fight in general changed? Nope. Despite me seeing Gojo as my please make Makima feel terror for the first and last time in her life card, I was generally captivated by his backstory and was made curious by how the power set of JJK works. It was definitely nice to finally learn what domain expansion actually means, and the editing, man, I swear, it's absolute peak. It feels like the epic's form or what the comic book deities were trying to evolve into. Like, the differently colored highlights for the text were pure genius. I'm not the first to say that Makima's breakdown is one of the best in Dead Battle's history, because, well, it is. They perfectly transition for introducing the shithole that is the Chainsaw Man world, team tasked to protect him from becoming a worse shithole, ironically led by the one who says she wants to make a better shithole. Most of her stuff is manga centered since the anime barely touched their character, but they juggle in using footage for both flawlessly, especially when the former allows for so much peak editing. And instead of just being dumb jokes, the cutaway gags both are perfectly used to better explain how Gojo's Hollow Purple and the many devils under Makima's star work. Most of the mentioned ones actually appear into the fight, really tickling the cheek of a gun part of my brain. The transition between Makima's cool and ruthless schemes into who she truly is at her core and how that factors into her defeat is just perfect description. I love the weird expression of her path back to hell, since you know, she's a devil from hell, so you know, she's just going back there. The thing about this debate in general is that it was just fun to think about. With how broken and context specific these two are, hell, they had to set the ground rules for this fight, It was just fun to think about all the countless possibilities. The setup is one of the funniest the show ever did, the sprites and hand-drawn work are nothing short of amazing, and they mix together flawlessly, and the 3D background is just as great. The way the powers bounce off each other is a delight to see, with Gojo essentially being a sponge and Makima carrying all sorts of water guns. Dido goes for the different brands of confidence colliding one another, in ways that may or may not have made me question my sexuality even more than I thought. Then there's the old elephant in the room I made a whole video over regarding Makima's characterization in the latter half of the fight, and yeah, while it does bring down some of the praise I've been getting a bit, I just don't feel like saying it even remotely compares to negate all of what I praised so far. Who Wears the Crown is hype-inducing in both title and music, channeling the Japanese instruments from JJK and the breakcore rock of Chainsaw Man. And yeah, there was my old personal thingy I had about wanting to see Makima lose, but even then, Gojo's line delivery as he does the infinite knowledge thingy just gives me major hype as if I was an actual JJK fan and I was waiting nothing but that. Especially with how intimidating they made Makima sound. If you decide to go into this episode, you agree to sign an honorable contract for big dead battle material. Alright, I feel like everything there is to praise about Will vs Discord has kinda rightfully been said already. The insane personality in the editing and the respective breakdowns, the many parallels and contrasts between the two, their own different approaches to fourth wall breaks. Okay, admittedly all this fancy looking stuff is kinda distracting considering there is a lot of information to unpack about these two, but still you can always rewind. Unlike that battle decision to promote a gambling program. Anywho, I love the inclusion of various community members one way or the other, really making this feel like a celebration. The care in every detail in the animation, the creativity, the blending between mediums, the killer soundtrack, the flawless voice performances that capture all sides of the characters, Discord sounding and immensely satisfying your old home. How they managed to do a ultimate abomination who can only be sealed and not defeated was Ultimate Trickster who does just that story perfectly. Again, look at my review for a full breakdown. But even if the one I was rooting for lost, Discord still manages to be the first loser to deprive the winner of any actual victory, especially since it will regenerate later on as long as chaos exists. Few things are as cathartic to hear as the desperate pleas of a shady dealmaker who realized he's been scammed into oblivion. So if you're in for a wild ride, this episode will make your expectations fall into chaos. Much like Bill vs Discord, again, everything there is to say about the peakness of Scooby-Doo vs Courage the Cowardly Dog has pretty much already been said, but this one means much more to me personally. I love the music that plays during the breakdowns, the fun facts about the respective breeds, nods the various memes and jokes. The cutaway gags are still whatever, unfortunately, but hearing them talk about a comfort character of mine, highlighting his underrated aspects like his unkillable nature and intelligence on top of his courageous spirit, was just a delight to see. Dido goes for the surprisingly brief yet impactful side note on anxiety. Making the crossover and friendship with Scooby-Doo part of the episode was quite honestly the best decision they could have done. It still gives me an indescribable feeling to see two characters in a death battle recognize each other as friends and run away together from the same problem. On a technical level, again, it's been said. Beautiful hand-drawn animation, 3D backgrounds, claymation, and an impeccable blending between all the above. Not to mention the stroke of genius they had to make this quote fight being two friends fighting over was to deal with the actually deadly threat, with the escalation happening simply from how powerful these two doggos actually are. I am biased of course, but Courage might quite possibly be the best character portrayal they ever did in the show's history, in my opinion. They capture his empathy, scaredy dogness, resourcefulness, and most importantly of all, his underdog status. He is someone who stands up to danger not because he is the biggest or strongest around. He is quite small and he gets overwhelmed in this very fight, but because the courage within him is a flame beyond anything anyone could hope to vanquish, no matter how big or threatening. Which is captured perfectly in what's currently my favorite death battle shot and honestly scene of all time, as Courage stands up to a wizened side the Scoob, terrified sure, but still trying to catch breath and unleashing a star-shattering scream so powerful that it manages to mute the background music. It's the first serious tie in the show's history, And again, brilliant idea to throw Eustace at the demon box to fill the death quota, as he pretty much died in every single episode of this own series, so it's just a Tuesday for him. Couple of that with Revolter Knight being the track I listen to the most, especially the part in the fight that goes the hardest in. And you have a strong contender for quite possibly the best episode in the entire show, and my favorite episode in general. So what could possibly beat it? Darth Vader vs Obito Uchiha holds a very special place in my heart, for many reasons. While it certainly wasn't the last emotional swing this season, it was certainly the first, and just left an irreplaceable mark in my heart ever since. I love hero-turned-villain type of stories that allow for look how great things were back then type of flashbacks. This was one of my most wanted, so it's not surprising I came into this episode with high expectations. But goodness, they decided to force choke them. I love how much time to delve into both of their former heroic selves, their traumas, their skills, their questionable mentoring teams, their fall, their powers, their redemption. For Anakin, they bring the same level of historical documentary type of Star Wars summary that they had from Yoda vs Mickey, except it feels like a personal documentary of sorts about the descent of a real person into darkness, though not without some humor in there. They flawlessly managed to avoid glorifying the torturous life of Darth Vader with a gag that goes over the Iron Maiden type coffin he's forced to wear 24/7, highlighting the sheer torture, the sheer hell he's forced to endure that Obito will later liberate him from, and how much of a dick Palpatine is in general, on top of foreshadowing the limitation of an electronics bound body. The only negative is that the whole Vader surviving a planetoid explosion kinda comes off as an afterthought, almost as if they didn't know where to place it. Speaking of not knowing, however, all I knew about Obito before this episode were the similarities he had with Vader when I read comments about why it's a popular matchup. And goodness did this breakdown made me realize how similar these two are. Parallel of Obito being essentially a dark version of Naruto, seeing a reminder of his former self in the latter, then having Obito find similarities in Anakin too during the battle was a brilliant move. It was nice to learn more about the jutsu system while we went over Obito's character journey, though I'm not sure why dedicate an entire gag to the specifics of his phasing. I mean, it's essentially just phasing with extra steps, But I adore the amount of focus they give to the infinite Tsukuyomi, which is vital to understand the end animation. Going to the fight itself, the vocal performances of both voice actors knock it out of the park, with Obito's being no stranger to voicing Uchiha's, which is genius since Obito impersonated Madara in canon, and the dynamic between the supernatural ghost-like ninja and the powerhouse force user is just really exciting to see unfold. Vader is yet another amazing character portrayal, with his slow march, nonchalant parries, general cold fury, rage at his past being used against him, just wow man. And the way the fight progresses with them slowly unmasking each other, both figuratively and literally, is just thematically orgasmic for me. After they both pull a Return of the Jedi on each other with their respective telekinesis, the resulting impact reveals Vader's robotic nature to his opponent, prompting this moment.
You've lost your humanity as well.
On the path of the dark side, it is inevitable.
This is a type of moment I always wanted to see in a death battle. Genuine empathy between two combatants. Obito sees a piece of himself in his opponent once again, which makes him regain his own composure from his previous outburst. And the way Vader doesn't even deny or ignore it, he just essentially coldly says, yeah, I did. It's what happens with the path I took. It's a cold acknowledgement of the reality he's stuck in, which just eats like an emotional train to me. It's a very strong they'll fix me, they fix everything vibes there. But it's not just the heartstrings that get tugged in this fight, because the action is amazing too. The scale of the 10-tailed beast kaiju, Vader no selling the explosion as the music blasts in full force, the way the fight gets evenly matched in a one-on-one speedball as Obito gets in Jinchuriki form, Vader looking like a demon when unmasked, the way Vader using his own ship is foreshadowed by it always being in the background, but nothing, and I mean nothing, beats everything following Obito's Too Late as the Tsukuyomi activates. music quickly reaches a crescendo, Vader breathing apparatus gasping. As we zoom into his eye, we see a subtle Sharingan symbol and we hear a music jingle as he's suddenly Anakin again, reaches out in hesitation to Padme, with a look that almost says, "Am I even worth it to reach out for you after all I've done?" It's the hesitation that somehow makes this amazing scene even better. Obito declares Anakin liberated from hell by putting him into a perfect dream mode free of pain, before throwing him into nothing with a DNA sword thing. And you know Obito wishing a piece on Vader's next life is sincere because as far as I can tell, reincarnation is actual thing in Naruto. Dust No Moon is perfect in pretty much every aspect. The title that could refer to either the infinite Tsukuyomi covering the moon or the Death Star resembling one, the slow and somber feel fitting for both tragic fallen heroes, the mechanical motif hinting at Vader's status as a machine more than man, the Uchiha motif rendered into almost a sad music box version, the qua, the track card being interpreted as the two either reaching out or letting go of their mentors for their past, just immaculate in every aspect. Honestly, this entire episode was my first 11 out of 10 and I very much struggled to see it ever being top, at least for me. If this dream of having a new favorite death battle forever is meant to last, then I hopefully chose to not wake up.
I only had pain inside here before, but really, what's the meaning in that? So I abandoned it all. Meanwhile, you have suffered all this time. It's okay now. You don't need to suffer anymore. Wish for whatever you want. Anything is possible in this Genjutsu world. That hole in your heart can be filled immediately.
And there it is, my ranking for Death Battle Season 10. The best, and personally most meaningful, season in the show's history. Very much looking forward to Season 11, but I'ma definitely follow the Beef-With approach of reviewing only episodes I care about, because it's been honestly very hard to follow the bi-weekly schedule this season without any breaks. In the meantime, I still have one more video in Most Wanted Death Battle episodes ever, so keep an eye out for those. Or anything else I might post really. I mean other fandoms too after all. Until then, I'm going to drink some water, you do the same. I'm Uncle Quitton, I hope I made your 2023 slightly better. Happy 2024.